AdLib is the DSP-agnostic buying platform to scale your programmatic campaigns smarter, faster, and more profitably. AdLib helps independent agencies and marketers deliver premium programmatic performance without the complexity, cost, or overhead of traditional DSPs. Their platform provides the tools, data, and automation to run enterprise-quality campaigns, from CTV and audio to geofencing and YouTube, all under one roof with zero trafficking headaches. Plus, they're not just a platform, they're your growth partner. The AdLib team helps you win new business, expand budgets, and deliver measurable ROI that keeps clients coming back. It's time to unlock programmatic. Join leading marketers worldwide who are using AdLib to deliver more campaigns with better results. Check out getadlib.com. Welcome to Open Market, a podcast about building companies in the advertising industry. I'm Joe Zappa, and I'm joined by Eric Franchi. How are you, Eric?
Doing well, Joe. You know what? I get a lot of questions about this topic that you made an X post about a week or so ago about events. It's pretty common across the portfolio, almost regardless of stage, them reaching out, asking, should I go to this event? If I go to this event, how do I maximize? How do I choose? One, I mean, for better or for worse, there's a ton of events for everybody to choose from this week. So I figured we would talk about it and, walk through all the major events, walk through how to think about them, maybe some mistakes folks make, and have some good guidance for everybody.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to do a guide to advertising events. I also get this question all the time from founders and marketing teams, especially earlier stage founders or first-time advertising founders. So you have a lot of experience with this. You've put together a great guide. And why don't you walk us through what the major anchors are in terms of the events people should be thinking about? And then I'll ask you some follow-up questions or add some details.
Okay, cool. So I think there's probably like 50 events if you count all of the different trade associations and small ones that pop up around. We're going to talk about the big six. What they are CES, and this is in order of how they appear in the calendar. CES, IABALM, Marketecture, Possible. Sidebar, my firm is an investor in the companies behind Marketecture and Possible, Cannes Lion, and Advertising Week. So that takes us from like literally the beginning of the year with CES right after the new year and Advertising Week in the fall.
I think that's just about right. I think, we'll get into some of the nuances around like CES and IABALM are very close together in the calendar. So there's a question of like, do you do both? But let's just go through them one by one and then we can get into the details. So for CES, what is it? Why go? Jump into it.
So CES, I've been going for a long time. At some point in, the 2010s, CES became just like yet another event that like the advertising people took over, which started with a completely different industry. And it's like literally called the Consumer Electronics Show. It has nothing to do with advertising, but we took it over as we're wont to do. It's in the beginning of the year. 250,000 odd people go to Vegas, but there's like a show within the show that is largely running in between two hotels, the Aria and the Cosmopolitan. Yeah, that our whole ecosystem pops up in. And it's great. I would say that like unless you're a super early stage startup that doesn't have an installed network of meetings to put on the calendar, this to me is like a must do. Everybody's there. It's the beginning of the year. Everyone is, kind of firmly entrenched in their plans, and now they're moving to execution mode. So you can pack a lot of meetings in a short amount of time. There's a lot of density in terms of people there. And if you can, think about it as the kickoff to the year, learn about the plans that all of your, partners and customers have, kind of be able to speak to your plan for the year, it can be extremely high ROI.
Yeah, I agree that CS is non-negotiable. As much as I hate being on the Vegas Strip, I think it is one of the best events of the year because it's first thing. It's like anything that drags over from Q4 that you didn't close, you get to follow up on. You get to sort of talk to people as they're still like planning their year and everyone's like enthusiastic. So I think it is a great call. Agree with your take that, you and I have spoken before on the pod about how we approach events. We are both like type A planner type people. So it's like get a dozen meetings on the calendar before you're there. And so if you're sort of new to the whole thing, like leading up to CES, sort of being public, talking to people, making first touches, et cetera, is big. So that way in December, you can start getting meetings on the calendar. And that would be a note, I guess, tactically for this one is you want to start sort of reaching out to people about CES like early December, because then the holidays hit and it's like January 5th or something. So there's very little time in the new year to get it together.
I wouldn't go if you don't have a full slate of meetings. You can do the serendipitous hangout at one of these bars that everybody hangs out at, try to like catch people, because you will catch people, but you'll catch them running to meetings. You're not going to catch them and have like a substantive 30-minute conversation. And the night stuff, I could frankly take it or leave it. Like this year when I went, like I had probably 10 meetings a day for 3 days, and I felt like it was super productive. So I agree. It's a must do. A couple of weeks later, there is the IAB annual leadership meeting, and it always takes place in Palm Springs. So it is always an absolute schlep for East Coasters to get there. Like, it's been years since I've gone. And I remember it was like plane to, some airport and then a long drive. And sometimes people would go to LA and take a really long drive. It's a schlep to get to. IAB ALM is different in that it's traditionally very much a seller-oriented crowd. That's changed a little bit with the IAB becoming less of a seller organization. So you'll have some agencies and brands there, but it's very much like the domain of the big platforms and the big publishers. There's a lot of conversations around what the priority is for the year, the agenda for the year, like big presentations, but it's a little bit more about like, you go because you want to go and you want to say that you went to ALM, that having, in my perspective, the ability to be like super, super productive from a meeting standpoint. But if you are an influencer within that world of media, it's probably worth going.
So I feel like the reason CES ended up becoming a huge ad tech event is because there are a lot of brands there, right? Because CES attracts
everybody's there.
That crowd. Yeah, everyone's there. IAB ALM, to your point, is probably a little more inside baseball, right? Like I spoke to a friend who is a seller at an ad tech company, and he said it was like 50% tech, 15% pubs, 35% buy side, which actually wouldn't be that bad in terms of if you get that much buy side there, I would say that that's pretty good for a lot of ad tech companies to go. But curious if you think that's about on point.
It's been a few years since I've gone. So 30-something% buy side is, I think, different than my impression of the event. If you are a company, to your point, right, most of the people there are on the tech side. If you're a company that like sells to ad tech, right, like a real picks and shovels company, and your audience is either the Lumascape or the sophisticated buy side, whether that's in-house or agency, that is the kind of other customer set for those tools, it's probably a fertile hunting ground for you, but it's not for everybody.
Look, there's also a logistical component to all of this, right? And I wanted to cover those things because I think, founders and marketers often have practical questions about events. So it's like as you said, for IBLM, you got someone in LA or in California, you can maybe send them and try it out. If you're in New York or abroad, you probably pass on that one. Same thing with Vegas. I think like everyone should go to CES. You had a good note there, which is like people are like, how do I do it? Like definitely stay at the Aria or the Cosmo, right? Because those are like the two hotels where like the mini ad tech show essentially happens. I think like 2 nights is probably enough. You can do 3 if you have like a ton of meetings. Yeah, just good to cover these things. Oh, also Vegas, cold in the winter. Pack a jacket.
Yeah. ALM is very content heavy. I mean, there's content at CES, but like I didn't see any content outside of a private curated event that we hosted with an agency to like have brands meet technology startups. Other than that, it was like meetings. ALM is content day and night. So a lot of people are there to frankly just like get immersed in the content. So again, if your objective is learning, if your objective is like really understanding what's going on in the space, for sure, ALM is a good option for you. Anyway, let's move on. So then in March, we have Marketecture. Marketecture, new addition to the calendar. As I said, my firm is an investor in Marketecture. Marketecture 3 is coming up in a month now here in New York City. It's a 2-day event. Marketecture, I think Ari and team have done a really good job of making it a differentiated play with his tagline that I don't think it's the official tagline. Maybe it is. It's for the builders and the doers. right? There are no panels. There's just like fireside chats or presentations or cool things you wouldn't see anywhere else, like the startup showcase, which I'm involved with. To me, like if you are, a technology leader, if you are a commercial leader, if like you're a founder and you want to be in these rooms that, have the builders and doers, like to me, this is like a must do. Super biased, but I think they've done a great job carving out a differentiated space for themselves.
Yeah, I think because of Ari's influence and sort of the DNA of Marketecture as a company, it's also very much like the influencer slash like online ad tech discussion event. Like more than any, like more than any other event, it feels like X in real life. And so, for me as a PR person, like if you want to influence the influencers, like the people who are sort of driving the discussion in the industry, it's a great place to be.
Yeah, totally agree. That's a good point. I've met my ex people that I otherwise would not have at Marketecture, and people should go. All right, moving on. The following month is Possible in Miami. Again, my firm is an investor in the company behind Possible. This is the fourth year of Possible, I believe.
I think fourth.
Yeah, they've done an incredible job. It's also a team that's done it before, led by Christian, who was the founder of to Mexico. They have done such a good job that one of the complaints about Possible is that it outgrew the Fontainebleau last year in terms of just the number of people and the capacity and everything like that. So I know that they're expanding it this year to the neighboring hotel. To me, Possible is like the sweet spot, not only in the calendar between CES and Cannes, but in terms of like it's a combination of CES and Cannes. The weather's better. You're in Miami. It's a really good environment. But it's a little bit more sales oriented from the standpoint of you've got a good mix of brands, agencies, publishers, and platforms. Most people are there because they're there to be productive and do meetings. And there's really good content and there's like really good senior level people. So if, you want to have, I think, a good mix of content and like highly productive days where you can line the calendar with meetings, Possible's become a must attend to me.
I would agree. I think it's one of the best events of the year. I've gone the last 2 years. I'm going. This will be the third year.
Nice.
It is full of ad tech founders. Very busy event. My perceptions are also a good number of brands and like buy side people there. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, it is. It's content heavy. There are multiple stages that are active like all day long. I'm so biased because like to me, events are about like meetings and connections and stuff like that. But the content at some of these events are great. And like, it's the first thing, or you'll see people on stage you wouldn't normally see before that you'd like to see on stage. Possible's done a fantastic job on the content side. It's probably the best from a content perspective at all. So if you're there to learn, it's a really good place for you to be as well.
Yeah. Logistics takes place at the Fontainebleau, huge resort on Miami Beach. You can find rooms there on Airbnb to try to get a little money off, or you could find like a cheaper hotel around in the area in Miami Beach. A lot of people also take meetings at the Eden Rock next door because Fontainebleau is so busy. Again, I think it's like a 2 nights kind of thing. If you have a full calendar, you can maybe even do 3. I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, they're expanding to Eden Rock. So some of the content is going to be in Eden Rock this year, including the innovation stage. And then it's also more friendly for Europe, because it's in, the East Coast of the US. So, it's like, the second city for people from New York. So all of New York goes and a lot of Europe goes as well. So you can do meetings with those folks.
Yes. The classic jokes about all of the New York people meeting in Miami, who live like 20 minutes from each other is very possible thing.
I know. Half of them have places in Miami now though. So, there's that as well. And speaking of Europe, you have just 2 months later, Cannes Lions in June. So you went last year, right, Joe? Was it for the first time?
I did, yes.
What was your impression of Cannes?
Cannes is crazy. It's super busy. It's super spread out. You're spending a lot of the time walking in like 85 degrees in like southern France. It's humid. You're like sweating through your clothes. You're trying to find Terry Kawaja's party. It's pretty crazy like that. So I think of all of these events, Cannes is the one where you need like the inside scoop on like, how do I do this? And you need to plan ahead and whatnot. Getting an Airbnb that's like sort of near the Croisette and near, what is it, like the like old port or whatever, which is where all of like the yachts are. Like that's a really good tactical tip. Finding a little restaurant like near the main square where you can take meetings, right? I'm curious, where do you take your meetings? Do you guys usually have a space? Because that's like a whole thing with Cannes, right? Like you got to find a spot.
So there's two ways to do it. It's number one, you are either a big company and make a big investment and you have your space, or you are not a big company and you are meeting with them and you're just like planning your calendar to meet with them at their spaces. And then if it's in between and it's like no space and no space, you figure it out. And you know, there's a couple of landmarks that,
I mean, I'm talking for the little people, you know, because it's like, if you're one of the bigger companies, you can get a yacht. And that's like obviously a big expense. All the yachts are next to each other and then it just becomes a meeting space. But I think like, you know, like the magnates and trade desks of the world, like they're going to get a yacht usually. And people can go take meetings on the boat, which, you know, for a lot of them is going to be ROI positive as long as they can tie it to meetings. Do you think it's worth doing like something we haven't talked about with all of these events is like, do you pay for speaking spots? Like, do you remember what you did at Undertone with that? And how would you advise people to think about the economics of paying for speaking?
I mean, once you're at a certain level of scale as a business and you've got a significant marketing budget, part of that budget goes to events, both in terms of like attendance and content. And there's certain stages where it probably is justified to put budget against speaking. And I would say Anne is probably one of them, depending on if you're speaking on the main stage or not. Possible might be another, just because of the number of people that go there just sheerly to be in the audience and see content. I'm not a hard no on paying for speaking. It's just got to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, you got to be able to do the napkin math and understand like who will actually be in the audience. You don't want to end up speaking to an empty room. But I think in Cannes in particular, I agree. If I were an ad tech company and I were going to pay to speak at one event, that might be it, because I just feel like there were a lot of brand and agency people who are just bouncing around at Cannes. Like that is why I think it's such a powerful event and one that basically all ad tech companies now attend. Is I think more than any other event, Cannes really is for the brands and agencies. I mean, it's famously like a creative festival, right? And so I think you are likely there to get in front of a lot of the people you want to reach.
So negatives are, it is super expensive between the plane ticket and the, you know, Airbnb and hotel costs increases. You know, if you're coming from the US, it is really expensive. And then to your point, if you don't kind of have the relationships to make sure that you can fill the calendar, you can count on the serendipity. But, you know, again, the serendipity is really, really hard to plan for.
I would say you can also get crafty. So a lot of my clients do not want to pay for big like speaking opportunities, right? They don't want to pay like 30 grand to talk at an event. So then I would say try to get crafty about like, other than the main show, right? Other than like the big Cannes show that's going on at the whatever it's called in French.
Palais.
The Palais, the Congrès des Festivals and whatever.
Exactly.
A lot of companies in the space have their own spaces, right? Like they'll have their like little space, their event space on the Croisette, on the Boulevard. And you could hypothetically partner with them on that. So that's one opportunity I would say to look out for, is if you don't want to pay for the main like speaking stage type thing, there are a lot of events going on around the event, and you should like work your network and see if there's anyone who's like, if a big commerce media company has a big like event space, can you partner with them? And maybe you talk, or your customer talks. That's one way to get around that.
There's tons of that. Again, if you haven't been, it's a little hard to describe it succinctly, but, you know, like companies will just rent yachts and companies will take over beaches, and then, you know, they have their own content going all the time. And if it's deep within your ecosystem, it probably creates an opportunity for you to have, you know, speaking engagements that aren't normally main stage. I think that's a great point. And then in the fall, there's Advertising Week in New York. It's a little strange. from a location standpoint, it's in a abandoned shopping mall in the middle of Herald Square. First timers can never find this thing. It's like very hard to like figure out exactly where it is. And it's on like multiple levels of this shopping mall that was kind of
It's
built
so
like
funny.
narrowly and then vertically. So it's like 4 floors. And
Let's just keep it 100, Eric. People hate the way this event is laid out. Like everyone makes fun of it every year where they're just like, New York is the center of the advertising world, and Advertising Week, you would think, should be like the flagship advertising event. Why is it in this like mall? It's like in the worst part of New York, which is like the Penn Station area, which is just like super like touristy and ugly. Yeah, we could do better, but it is nevertheless in New York, and like so many ad tech companies like are based there. And so it's kind of like, assuming you are based there, you can easily get to New York. It's like, why wouldn't you at least show up and take meetings, right?
Absolutely. For this one, it could be productive if you're in New York and lots of people come in for it. You can even spin up your own thing outside of Advertising Week, throw a happy hour, dinner, something like that. It's content heavy again. So, if you could be on a stage, I'll tell you, I did a talk last year, and it was not only standing room only, like there was people that got turned away at the door. So there's a lot of people that come to Advertising Week.
Yep.
It's just a matter of, playing the odds on if speaking makes sense for you. And then, you do get the opportunity to take that content to a degree and then use it, for further kind of distribution and amplification on social. So I think it has a purpose. But my session was in the basement of Advertising Week. Like, again, it's a mall. It was probably like what used to be the ladies' shoe section. So it was like the ceiling was really low, like the lighting wasn't enough. But hey, it was standing room only to hear some guy talk about venture capital. So there's all was not lost. Anyway, right, starts in the beginning of the year and goes all the way through end of September. How does one go about choosing how to fill their calendar or not filling their calendar with all of these events? What's the best way to do this? Do we talk about like stage of company?
Yeah, I think we should talk about stage of company, so you can run the people through that. I would say a couple things. One is, do the napkin math. So just figure out what the average customer is worth to you. And like, honestly, that's how I would do it as an early stage founder, right? I would be thinking, what is my average customer worth? How many meetings do I think I can get? And what is the probability that this is going to be ROI positive? So that's something I would think about. Mm-hmm. But the other thing I would say is, which anyone who knows me will be unsurprised to hear, is like, the event will be much more effective if it's not the only marketing thing you're doing. Like as a founder, just make sure you are getting in front of people and putting out content regularly, because then the event will be much more effective, right? Like as we've talked about many times, like do the Jonathan Moffey thing, the streamer founder, where it's like, you bug the people you want to meet with at the event all year round on LinkedIn or whatever. And then it should be much easier come the event time to make the event ROI positive, because these people will know you and they'll want to take meetings with you. So that'll be my one note before you talk about stages.
I like that. No, I like that a lot. Okay. We have a lot of early stage founders that listen to this pod, as well as like later stage companies and executives. So let's set a demarcation line. So if you are an early stage founder, let's say you are a seed stage founder, here is Franchi's prescription for you. You do one major anchor event maximum. If you're in the US, that means you're going to CES. You do one curated event. So if you're in the US, you're maybe doing architecture, you're maybe doing possible. So those are your 2 for the year. Right. So that's number 1 in terms of the quantity. Number 2 from Unc Franchi is book your meetings in advance. So you want to have like your calendar set, basically like a couple weeks leading into this, and do all of your work up front. And then number 3, my strong recommendation is you avoid the sponsorship spends like in the beginning completely. And just go there to be like biz dev mode, founder mode, doing your meetings, telling everybody about the company. So there's your prescription for early stage companies. You got it.
Especially because, go the first time to the major ones and don't spend, like do it thrifty, and you will get a learning opportunity, right? You can do it from a biz dev perspective, but also like go to CES possible, maybe even can, but just go one or two people, don't sponsor anything. And then you get the chance to see for yourself and you can decide for the next year, like depending on how the business is evolving, do we want to make a bigger splash? Do we want to pay for things, whatever?
Or maybe the next year, right? So let's say you went from C to A to B, right? The company is now 36 months old. You're firing on all cylinders. Then I'm thinking like you might be justified attending most, right? Maybe you're doing 4 of the 6. You are like prioritizing where your customer base is, right? So if you are agentic workflow company that sells to advertising technology, right? Like that ecosystem showing up everywhere versus if you're right, like if you're building something that's direct to brand or otherwise, right? So it's like prioritizing based on where your people are. I think at that level, you've got a real marketing budget. So you're probably in a position to start thinking about sponsorships and what that entails in terms of invisibility, time on stage, everything you get for a package, right? So I think here you're starting to think through how this fits in the mix. But like ultimately, like you should be using these as a way to kickstart and compress your sales cycle. Just getting as many of your enterprise customers together with you in these events and trying to close a lot of deals.
Agreed. Well said. You want to talk about common mistakes?
Common mistakes. Absolutely. So, all right, I put together a list here. We'll just go kind of one by one quickly. So first is, as you can imagine from Eric and Joe, showing up without meetings booked. Like you can do that once as a mistake to see if you are actually the exception to the rule or the unicorn and everybody's going to come to you. But like, don't go and spend your money without lining the calendar. It's just the biggest rookie move.
Assume you are not Joe Zawadzki and you will not be mobbed with people who want to talk to you wherever you go. So fun story for the folks. I went to Possible last year, and who was next to me in Delta, if not Joe Zawadzki? And so we literally sat next to each other on the plane. We had not planned this. And then we walked through the Miami airport together. And Joe cannot walk like 6 feet at an advertising event without someone stopping him. I'm sure it's the same for you, but you don't have the iconic floppy hair, Eric. So you can't be spotted from far away via the iconic hairdo. So yeah, if you're Joe, you can get away with that. But for most people, yeah, book your events, your meetings in advance.
It's actually so bad with Joe that I walk either behind him, like significantly behind him, or on the other side of the walkway, just to be able to make it to meetings on time. He is very famous. What can I say? He deserves it. All right. Okay. So showing up without meetings booked is number 1. Number 2, sponsoring before like you have product market fit, sponsoring before like you've really figured it out and starting to scale. I think it's you're probably too early to be doing it. And then B, like going and sponsoring and, starting to brand yourself as the company that does X before you figured out that X is your reason for existence doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yep. 100%.
Number 3, confusing energy with pipeline. This was a letter to old Eric. I used to like go to events and meet a lot of people, have a lot of good conversations, and those conversations didn't turn into pipeline, right? So, I think that was a result of, maybe counting a little bit too much on serendipity, maybe just, being busy and less surgical with like meetings with the right constituencies. So you could go and come back and like be like, oh my God, Cannes was amazing. I met all these great people. I had all these great, experiences and conversations. And then you look and nothing becomes a bit from a commercialization standpoint. Like make sure you're not just setting up meetings, but you're setting up meetings with the right people and just doing it the right way.
Yeah, it's a great note. Like people who could actually buy from you, obviously not exclusively, but primarily if possible. And then also just remembering that the beauty of events is that people who would not take a video call with you will sometimes take an in-person meeting because they're like, well, I'm there anyway. So like, but let's do it. But that's also the challenge of events is that sometimes people take meetings where they're like, yeah, like, sure, but they're not like super serious about it. And I think the way to get around that is all the stuff we usually talk about, like getting a warm intro can help, right? To just like firm up the seriousness, but then also trying to make sure these people know you in advance so that they already are primed for you and they're not hearing of you for the first time when they take that meeting.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Trying to attend everything, as a CEO, as a founder, that's why you have teams, right? So I don't think you necessarily like need to attend all of these events, and don't give in to the FOMO of, feeling like you need to be there. And then finally, this is a note, I'm saying this politely, optimizing for optics instead of outcomes. I think there's an inverse correlation between the number of selfies that a person might be posting on LinkedIn and X and how productive they actually are at these events. When was the last time you actually saw a selfie of me, Joe?
I don't see them unless someone else forces you to do one.
Exactly. It's because I'm not like trying to show that I'm like at CES, I'm at, Cannes, I'm at Possible. I'm there doing the work. So, less selfies, less kind of positioning that, you're here and you're having a great time in the South of France, more work. And I know some people feel differently about that.
Amen. Put the nose to the grindstone, folks. You heard it from Chopped Unk Franchi.
By the way, I heard maybe I know I'm old, right? I thought unk meant uncle, but it doesn't.
Well,
do you know that?
Yeah, well, it's like slang for like, slang for like old guy. Yeah.
No, I've been told that it's short for uncool.
Oh, really?
Uncool.
I don't know if this is like doing public math. Yeah, this is like doing public math. Like this could get very embarrassing if we don't cut this off. So, and I don't know whom it will be more embarrassing for. So I think we should run before we get in deeper trouble.
Okay, Mike, we're going to cut this one out.
No, keep it, Mike. You heard it here from your chopped unks. See you next week, everyone.
No. Do a proper ending. We're cutting this.
No, this is cold. I'm not cutting this. Thank you, Eric.
This has been your guide to the advertising events calendar. We think this is probably going to be evergreen. We think there's probably going to be more events that pop up over time, but hopefully this has been valuable for you. And we thank you for listening to Open Market.
Amen. Thanks, Eric.
Thanks.